All right, here we go with episode 100 of Return to Authenticity. And this week's guest, my good friend, Dennis Morolda. This is going to be a lot of fun. So welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Dennis Morolda, and our show is the number 100 episode. I've specifically invited Dennis to be on because he and I go back. It's funny because we have never met in person, and yet I feel like he is a brother and a friend. For those that maybe haven't heard Dennis's previous episodes on my show, he was on episode 12. He was also on episode 1 of RTA Uncut. So I have another format that I've only done 4 of. A little bit, it was designed to be a little briefer, although I think you and I talked for probably an hour on that one as well, but RTA Uncut episode 1. And I had Dennis's brother, Anthony, on episode 27. So he's got a long history with the show. For a little bit of background, Dennis grew up in New Jersey as an athlete. He went to college to study education. He became a teacher and later an assistant principal and then a principal in just a few short years. He left the schoolhouse then to focus on building up young men in a more effective way, as he saw how desperately young men needed the help and how they weren't getting it in school. Along with being a mentor, a coach, and a consultant, he started the Building Men podcast, which is now massive. And it's where I first discovered Dennis. I was training for a long distance trail marathon or ultra marathon, actually. And I was running in the woods, lover of podcasts. And I was looking for different shows. And I somehow stumbled upon Building Men. I don't even know how I did, but I found it. And I started right at the beginning. So this would have been in 2021. I think Dennis started Building Men in 2020. And I went right back to episode 1 and I listened to this guy kind of bumbling and stumbling along on the microphone. And for whatever reason, I sort of fell in love with his style. And I listened from his first show and just started rolling forward. And they were real brief at the time. And I was running for hours and hours. So I was able to blow through tons of shows and get to know Dennis. And then at some point, I reached out to him to say, I love your show, or did something through Instagram. And Dennis was so kind-hearted, and he reached back out to me. I shared somewhere along the way that I was going to start my own podcast, and he said, "Hey, if I can ever help you," and he did. He was super instrumental in me getting my show off the ground, encouraging me, kind of getting me over the hump on some of the technology questions that I had, and it's just been a great mentor and a helper to me in this whole social media podcast world. So if you haven't met him before, you're going to love this episode. You're going to love hearing from this guy. He's got a massive heart for helping others. He has a great sense of humor, and he has a terrible choice in professional sports teams. So we'll get to that too. And with that, brother, Dennis Morolda, welcome to the show.
What's up, man? That's a big time intro right there. Thanks so much. Really, really appreciate that. We do go back a ways, Eric.
We do. It's been a couple years. We got Enlifted in common as well. So a couple levels of Enlifted certifications under my belt. Did you ever?
Were you in the Enlifted process, or was that after we had spoken? You got into Enlifted after that?
Man, so I think that maybe that was part of how we got connected. So I had a coach, Jennifer McMaster, who was a coach of mine, and she described some of the things that the tools she used as story work. And then I heard you talking about it. I'm like, but you were calling it Enlifted. And I'm like, wait, these things sound the same, but they have different names or calling different things. And I asked you about it. I think part of it, I reached out to you and said, what is this? And you're like, that's actually what Enlifted was before it was Enlifted. It was called story work, or something like that.
Vocabulary, I believe.
Vocabulary. Yeah. And so anyway, I think I had not started yet, but I was being coached through that. And I asked you, I was thinking of starting level 1. I'm like, is it legit? Should I do it? And you're like, totally do it. It was super valuable to me. And so I went through level 1, met Mark England and all that crazy group of people, and then went through and did level 2. Love that as well. I didn't do 3. I don't know if he's actually still doing 3 or what. I haven't been paying as much attention lately on that side, but do you know?
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. 3 was part of where I was heading, and then for whatever reason, life got in the way, and I paused that. I'm not sure if they're doing 3 right now either. Like that gets deep into like the ancestral traumas and generational things that are going on.
Yeah,
I did a lot of work on that after the fact without even, going through the Enlifted process. But you recognize a lot of the stuff that we're going through, especially as men. There was a lot of things that happened in our lineage that have,
yes.
caused us to be the way we are, and a lot of work there as well. But no, I'm uncertain if they're still doing it or not.
Yeah.
I love those people. I've
Yeah.
never met an enlifted coach that I had anything bad to say about at all. It's been a really cool experience, that community, and we know it's all about community, right?
Yeah.
It's such an important piece of it. And for me, while I'm not doing the coaching piece like I once was, that was some of the best money I've ever spent, is going through
Yeah.
that program.
Yeah, agreed. It was, in fact, I took those tools. So it was, for those that maybe aren't aware, you go through Enlifted as a certification, you experience it as a participant. And it was really powerful for me to go through and see how some of my story of the things I was carrying with me, where the parts didn't serve me, and yet I was still carrying that baggage along. And then I saw how just impactful it was for me. And so I incorporate a lot of those tools into the coaching that I do as well. And my clients have, they've equally loved it. It's a great thing. And I would agree, the people involved in that community are just top notch. And I've had many of them on my show: Chase Tullison, Austin Linney, Kimberly Kesting. I mean, so, in fact, I have not had Mark, and I'm sure he would be happy to be
He'll
on it.
do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I just haven't asked him, but yeah, he and I have a lot in common. We both love to shoot and do stuff out, kind of run and guns, do some of that stuff. He's actually come to Texas a few times, and we almost got together to do some of that, but we weren't able to connect the dots. But yeah, and one of these days I'm going to ride up to the lake house, to the infamous lake house, to see that. But Clint Lockoff was another one of my guests. He's another big and lifted guy.
Yeah,
He's actually local, knows my dad well. In fact, I was just with my dad actually for a cup of coffee. It's a whole story there, but yeah, my dad and I meet whenever we can on Friday mornings now for coffee. And
that's cool.
yeah, we spend that time, and intentionally. So, but with that, so let's talk a bit about building men, man, and both not necessarily the podcast so much, but about what you're doing with young men. I love that, the heart you've got for helping young men. I think it's so vital because, these young men, it's like they're sort of lost. I think men in general are some of the loneliest creatures on the planet. And, you're sort of taught you don't need other things. You don't need other people. You don't need other men. It's like, if you show that you need other people or men, you're weak. And so men sit in this isolation, and I think it's terrible. And so, but talk about that, like what you're seeing with the young men, and kind of what your heart is around the Building Men program.
Yeah, I just did this lesson when I go into a school, and that's primarily what I'm doing right now. I do my own coaching, I do group coaching, but my passion has led me back into schools after leaving as a principal. Now I'm going back in as an entrepreneur and working with boys, typically in middle school and in high school. And I'll go in for an assembly type program in the beginning of the year to generate some interest in, and I get to tell my story to the boys. And then I'll go in about once a month, and I'll meet with anywhere between, I don't know, 50 and 150 boys. And they're usually in groups of anywhere between like 15 to 25 boys at a time. And usually a mentor from the school, guidance counselor, a social worker, assistant principal will join me as well. And then the schools where it works really well, those guys, I have like 4 or 5 guys, and they come and they participate. So it's like them rolling up their sleeves doing a mastermind for men.
Mm.
And they're also, learning by doing, like you mentioned before, the constructivist approach. But then they're also teaching the boys how do you share something that's, really tough to talk about and be vulnerable. And in a recent meeting that I did, I showed a video clip of a guy named Joe Ehrman. Joe Ehrman played football for the Baltimore Colts back in the 1970s.
Mm.
And he was a larger than life, demonstrative, charismatic guy, and was living the lifestyle of a professional athlete, right? He would go out partying, drinking, smoking some weed. He was making good money, playing professional football. He was getting the girls, getting laid as much as he wanted to, pretty much. He also had a younger brother, Billy, who at the time, say Joe was in his mid 20s in the late 70s, prior to the Baltimore Colts relocating to Indianapolis. And his younger brother, Billy, idolized Joe. As you can imagine,
Mm.
your older brother is playing professional football. This is the greatest thing in the entire world. But as he's playing football, Joe doesn't have as much time for his younger brother because, he's drinking,
Yeah.
gambling, getting laid, playing, that was the lifestyle that he was living. And he gets a call after one season from his mom saying, Joe, get home immediately. Get home. You got to be home right away. Billy's sick. And so all of a sudden, Joe, that's the phone call, that we all dread in our lifetimes, right? And so Joe goes home and he finds out that his brother has an inoperable brain tumor and he has a very short period of time to live. So Joe basically is like, I'm going to spend as much time as I can now with my younger brother. And he has this epiphany, like, I'm spending my time, doing all the things that we think are important, playing sports, getting girls, making money, and this relationship that I have, I didn't really honor it and foster it. And now he watches his brother deteriorate and
Mm.
die in a short period of time. And he changes his whole thought process around life. And he really started to think about, what does it mean to be a man? Like, what does it really mean? And so I showed the boys a very short video clip of that. And where I paused it was Joe started talking about the three words that hit men really hard, that are dangerous words for men to hear. And when I heard Joe say this on the video, and coincidentally enough, I met Joe, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. I heard him speak and I came up and I shook his hand and told him that I was doing this Building Men program. And I have a book that he autographed for me. But the three words that he talks about are be a man
Mm.
or man up, right? And those that are listening, you probably resonate with that in some way, where when you felt as though you were feeling vulnerable or not good enough or weak in some capacity, you were told to be a man, right? And what does it mean then? What does that mean to be a man, right? We're never given a playbook. Some of us, you mentioned you had coffee with your dad this morning and on Friday mornings. That's an awesome thing. I don't have that relationship with my father. I was never told by my dad or taught or went through any kind of ritualistic rites of passage about what it means to be a man. My father was talking more about being the best athlete, getting with girls and making money, right? And that's the thing that Joe was talking about in this book and on the TED Talk. And what I decided to do was talk to the boys about, okay, well then, if it's not about those things, and it makes us really, upset and uncomfortable when we hear that idea, be a man, stop being a sissy, grow up, grow a set, sack up. What does it mean then? You're never taught it in school. And for those of us who are not lucky enough to have a positive male role model in our life, then what do we do? How do we figure it out? And a lot of it is making a million mistakes along the journey as we're going through that developmental process. So what I attempt to do is to talk to the boys about that, the answer to that question of, what does it mean to be a man? Like, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
And so we have real conversations about it, and we roll up our sleeves and we get into it. And there are activities that we do, and we set up a space in a circle to talk about the stuff. Everyone shares wins and struggles that they're going through, and then whatever our topic of conversation is, we dive deep into it. And every single meeting, every boy has an opportunity to have their voice be heard. And it might be in a more, nonchalant, like, hey, this is what's going on in my life, or it might be in a more professional setting where we're talking about, how do you communicate in a very professional manner? How do you communicate? By making eye contact with the audience, by really understanding the cadence, the volume, the tone of your voice when you're speaking. How do you use pauses? So we actually get into presentation topics every single time that we meet together. And then we talk about healthy habits as well that we sprinkle in. I don't beat them over the head with it, but we talk about the importance of getting enough sleep, the importance of hydration, the importance of movement, the importance of strength training, the importance of reading, of journaling, of getting outside in the sunlight, of intentionally cutting down the amount of screen time that
Mm.
you're connecting with technology, right? We talk about reading. We talk about all those really important things, nutrition, not only the food that you're putting in your body, but also the sources of media that you're putting into your body.
Mm.
And slowly but surely, Eric, what happens over the course of several months as the boys are committing to this, we've noticed a couple things in the different points, the touch points that I have in schools across the country is, once a school district commits to this and we have the same group of boys that are coming back month after month, there are challenges that the boys have to do every month. And the challenge might be tracking their sleep. It might be cutting their screen time down by 10% over the course of the month. It might be reading 10 pages a day. It might be doing whatever their one set max is for push-ups. So we're trying to do several push-ups over the course of a month. It might be just doing something kind for another human being without any expectation of reciprocation. And by the boys doing this, incorporating these healthy habits, these ideas of character pillars and what does it be to a man, the actual results were like unbelievably tremendous that we saw in the schools where I'm working. And the results are the boys that are part of the program, they've seen an increase in their grade point average from one year to the next, right? And that was a small metric, but it was about a 3.5–4% increase in their grades, which is great,
Yep.
right? It's
Which
about
is
a half a
great.
letter grade. But the two unbelievable things that we saw was the boys that are part of the program, they've seen a 39% decrease in unexcused absences from one year to the next. And the most staggering thing was the boys that are part of the program, and these boys were typically identified for one reason or another. A lot of them were either socially disconnected or there were behavioral challenges in the school. The boys saw an 88% decrease in disciplinary referrals to the office. 88%, which is
Wow.
unreal. So now if the kids are getting better grades, they're in school and they're not getting tossed out of class for disciplinary reasons, all of a sudden these paths start opening up in front of them. And forget about it. If I'm a school district and now not only are the teachers happier because there's less behavior problems with the boys in the school, the kids are getting better grades. You see the school climate changing because of this. You're keeping the kids in class and you're keeping them in district. They're not getting classified into special education. They're not being sent out to an alternative behavior school, or the school district doesn't have to hire a one-on-one behavior aide to work with a lot of these kids. So the school districts are also seeing the ancillary benefits of cost savings that are associated with the Building Men program. And
Mm.
those were just, we didn't anticipate those things happening. They just happened. So now all of a sudden people are like, all right, how do we get involved with this? So I'm at the point, Eric, where I'm ready to start scaling this into a larger level because of what we were able to see. And a lot of it was, to be honest, school districts taking a chance,
Yeah.
to bring in some dude from Jersey that's going to come in and work with the boys in your school once a month. There's a lot of pushback around it, but those schools that have pushed their chips in have seen like the unbelievable results of that, connection and belief in what we're doing.
Wow, man. I love that. Um, I have so many questions around this program. And for those that don't know, if you go back and listen to that episode, the episode that I mentioned that Dennis was on, episode 12, he talks a lot about, so he developed the foundation, at least, of this program, and he was teaching it in school as while he was employed by the school, and the school leadership administration at some point said, you got to stop doing that and you got to start focusing on specialized the testing, right? Not specialized testing, but the
Standardized testing.
standardized testing, and that became unacceptable. And so Dennis walked away from a 6-figure income, benefits, all this, after having worked it for a while, that if you could kind of go, man, 10 more years of this and I got my retirement, I'm done.
Yeah.
Stepped away from that because he was so passionate about this program is needed. I'm going to put my chips in and go do this independently. And now to see schools are paying you to come in and deliver the program that, again, not the same schools, but they're paying you to come in and deliver a program that you were initially told or originally told you can't do it. And so the need for it, and the fact that you took the chance you took, and now to see, you could have folded your cards and said, okay, well, I guess I got to put this program, mothball it, and just keep working. And then who's not impacted? These boys, these young men are not impacted. You took a chance. Now now it's starting to take off and explode. So I was going to ask, like, you're the guy doing the delivery. At some point, you need helpers, right? Or do you already have helpers helping you deliver?
So when possible, I'm bringing Julie's son Liam with me, and I'm bringing my son Denny with me. They're both in school, so I can't do it all the time, but I'm grooming them if ever they want to have a deeper role in it. But it's cool for the boys too. So they're 19 and 20 years old, right? And so if I have a group of boys who are 14, 15 years old, and they're looking to
Mhm.
these guys that have just been through that, right? I'm 47 years old. So my level of connection with the boys, I'm, a generation or two away from where they are right now, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm able to bring someone in that's where they were just 2 or 3 years ago, right? We know as a coach, what you want to do is you want to find someone who just went through what you went through. I'm not going to hire right now Tony Robbins as my coach.
Right.
I'm going to hire a guy who's just went through what I went through. I could afford to work with them or whatever. So I
Right.
do have those guys. They're more they're mentors. They're going through like internship kinds of things. There's a couple of the men at the schools where I work who I've had conversations like, hey, listen, let me know if you're interested in taking on a large role. Because here's the thing, for me to endorse someone, like you have to go through the program, right? You have to, I can't just be like, oh, all right, come on and run this program for me. Like
Right.
it's my name, my business, my reputation on the line. You have to really go through it. I need to watch you deliver the service in the
Right.
program. So what I'm actually doing over the summer is there's going to be a couple spots in Jersey, and I may or may not offer the same thing online, but to actually create a I have the curriculum for it. It's already done, a building men certification program. So if
Mm,
you're interested in running it for your school, what I'm doing is I'm offering, and I have three different locations in Jersey, and I'll walk you through the entire process from, how do you identify kids, to how do you structure the meetings, to how do you communicate developmental needs of the kids in upper elementary and middle school and in high school. What are the character pillars? How do you go about setting the challenges? What do you do when there's pushback from the boys? Because that's inevitably going to happen. I walk into an inner city school in North Jersey, and the first thing that they do is, who's this big white dude that's trying to talk to me
yeah.
about how to be a man? Are you kidding me?
Right.
And all of a sudden now, like when I go back, the same group of boys, they walk up to me, they shake my hand, they ask me how I'm doing, they give me some stories that are going on in their life, they give me some good news, they talk to me about struggles. So there's a lot that's going on there. So I'm offering three different things this summer. Is one, like you go through the course and I'll show you what to do, and then you're off on your own without my support. The second option is you come through the certification process. I will give you all the materials that you need, and then I will go in and have several touch points, observations. It'll be like a gradual release of responsibility. I'll do a meeting, then we do one together, and then you do one, and I'll observe and give you some feedback, and then you could run on your own. And the last one is at a higher price point, is I go in and I run Building Men every single month. I take care of everything. There's nothing that you need to do. I just ask that the school district has a school district employee that sits in on the meeting, just in case there's ever any emergency situations, any discipline type things that occur. That person from the district can step in, and then it could also speak on the behalf of the district, like, this guy's legit, he knows what he's doing. Like, we don't have to worry about him talking about inappropriate things with the boys as well.
Right. 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 Man, that's exciting. It's just so exciting to see where you're taking that program and how it's really exploded, and maybe even beyond. Is it beyond sort of what you were envisioning when you started this a few years ago?
Absolutely, Eric. And it's the crazy thing, like you mentioned, like put it in mothballs. Like I had it there and it was on the shelf and I'm staring at it. But I'm like, I'm gonna coach men who went through a divorce. I'm gonna coach men who are struggling with their physical fitness. And the whole time it's looking at me right in the face, like all I need to do is, I can do this. I just need to figure out the path of how to get to the point. But I've already run the program. I was a teacher, an administrator. I was a coach. I've done all the things. I have it here. I just had to figure out how to get from A to B. And I took several different, iterations and life journeys along the
Yeah.
process, but they all taught me something that helped me deliver this program with fidelity, and it works. I'm in inner city schools. I fly out to Minnesota once a month, and I work with a suburb of Minneapolis school district. It's called Shakopee, and it's a gigantic school district, and I work with the boys in that school district, and it works there. It works in, higher socioeconomic areas. The
Mm,
kids are all going through the same types of things. It's a little bit different how they're going through it. It's a little bit different, the support that they have at home, the family dynamics, their community, but they're all struggling with, you know, manning up, being a man. How do I process emotions? How do I still, do that while feeling strong? And I could, practice the idea of being a stoic man that's also vulnerable, right?
mm,
There's a lot going on there. They're all going through these types of things. So what I try to do is normalize. You're not the only one. You're not the only one who feels like that. And then here's a bit of a roadmap that you can follow to find success yourself.
and I love it. I know I heard you on a show. I was listening to, it was actually your show. I know you did where, so you were on his and he was on yours, Mikey C Rock, Mikey Sirocco.
Yeah.
He was on mine as well. And I love the guy. He's got such a big heart as well. But you talked about when you're in some of the initial stages with meeting the boys, and you'll say, who are you? And they'll say, I'm Joe, and I'm a baseball player, as opposed to I play baseball, right? So they identify with that, with the athlete. And then at some point that gets taken away, and so they can struggle. And so this whole idea of, you are not the thing that you're doing. That's not you. you do that, but that's not you and who you are. So who are you type of thing, and try to really peel back into
Yep.
that, which I think is super important. And the other thing you talked about in the show is this whole idea of giving, right? Of giving to others and serving others as being sort of a core thing that whether you're trying to get them there or not, it's an important thought that a lot of current thinking is take, right? What can I get from this person? Like, what can I get? How do I take care of me? Like, let me think about me, and trying to instill more of this mindset of service, or provide. It's more being that a giving mindset or a serving mindset in the young men, and it's, I think it's, man, it's such a challenge because everything that the phone, the
Oh,
communication, the supercomputer we carry around is
yep.
saying, all the social media platforms is basically, get yours, go get yours. And how do you how do you focus on you and showcase you and get you, and so you're really pushing against a big tide there.
We talk about being self-disciplined, focusing on self-improvement while being other-centered. Right. And so you do need to focus on you. Like, how can you show up as the best you that you can be by, we talked about those healthy habits, by reading, by getting up on time, by, doing all the
Mm.
things, working out. But while you're doing that, you're focusing on what can I do to help another person potentially breathe easier because I was on this planet. And then I tell the boys, one of the, capital T truths of life is it actually feels really good when you help another person. Like you get this euphoric high when I do
Mm.
something in a kind way for another person, but until you do it, you don't really experience that. It's like the movie Scrooge with Bill Murray, right? It's all like all of a sudden at the end he's like, I want more of that feeling once you get going with it. And so what we do is we normalize it with, so now I have a group of boys and we talk about it, and like what their job is to do something kind for the person, then come back and talk about it. And I'm like, imagine tonight when you go home, if you just empty the dishwasher for mom without being told, what do you think's going to happen there? It's going to take you 4 freaking minutes to do that, right? That's it. But the feeling that she's going to get to like, wow, my son just did that. And then what if that just becomes the things that you do? There's so many doors that open up, and while you're not doing it for a selfish reason, that's
Right.
what happens in the world. If you're doing something kind for other people, kindness finds its way back to you. It No one tells the kids that though in school. They're not really taught that. They're not really taught those things. It might be part of a conversation that they're having with a teacher at some point, but that's never a focus of a full day. Being other centered. What can you do to help another person? So that's what we're trying to do here too, is what are those things? What does that mean to be a man? And then how do we talk about them and normalize them? Do I think it's important that the kids learn what they need to, learn as far as like algebra and literature and social studies and science? Yes, I do. But do I think that learning how to be a good man in the world today is more important? Yes, I do. And I tell the boys that. And I don't bullshit them. I'm like, is what you're learning in school important? Sure. Is whatever the assignment that you're given, should you do that with fidelity? Like, I'm going to do the best that I can at whatever this is that's in front of me. Yes, I believe that. Do I think that that's more important than learning how to act with integrity, taking radical responsibility, being physically strong, having a purpose, acting with self-discipline, being a leader? Is that more important than those things? Yes, I do. I do
Yeah.
believe they are.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. What if you were to say, for folks listening to the show, the thing that you see that would surprise them about their boys, right? The things that you see, or the when you see these young men when they sit in that circle for the first time, um, what are you seeing, and what do you think might be a surprise to the families that the families aren't getting to see because of their relationship as the parents?
There's a lot of, I'm sure the parents would know that there's a lot of posturing with the boys. One of their biggest fears is, well, the two are failure and being perceived as weak.
Mm.
So whenever they're put in a position where they feel as though they look weak in the eyes of peers, of their parents, of teachers, of a coach, of the opposite sex, that's where you start to see boys not knowing how to deal with that emotion of feeling like I let someone else down or I'm weak. And a lot of times for girls, it comes in, a lot of the depressive thoughts in the boys while that's happening and masks itself in aggressive behaviors or behaviors that are outside of the norm for them. So that's something I see 100%. Here's the other thing, like if your son has a phone that has connection to the internet, you need to have a conversation about pornography right now. You have to have
Mm.
it yesterday. We talked about that a lot. Like I have boys that come to me after a meeting is over, and I'll just say the way that a kid said it to me. There was a boy in a school district in North Jersey after the meeting was over. He came up to me and he goes, Mr. Morale, he goes, I wanted to let you know that I really struggled with beating my meat. And I was like, yeah, dude, I get it. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've been there, man. I'm
Yeah.
like, do you want to talk about it? He's like, I was addicted to it to where I was watching porn on my phone. He said like 3 and 4 times a day, and I always felt ashamed about it. And he's like, and you talked about pornography, and everyone the boys when they first hear it, they kind of like look around and they chuckle and they laugh, but they're all looking at it. And I'm like, all right, so let's talk about it. Let's talk about what that actually does to your brain. They're not hearing that in their classes in 8th grade or freshman or sophomore year. They're not talking about those things. And even sex education class, while they
Yeah.
might tiptoe into it, they're not having the same conversations that I'm having about what that does to physiologically to their body, where there's so many men in their 20s that are suffering from erectile dysfunction right now.
Yeah.
And I'm also like, if you're carrying your phone next to your junk, like that could potentially lead to some problems in the future.
Yeah.
They're not hearing those things, but once they hear about them and then they're able to talk about them in a safe space, they're like, dude, I'm doing that too. And they're like, me too. And all of a sudden, like I'm not the only one that's
Yeah.
feeling like this. It's a really powerful thing. And so the boy that came up to talk to me said, but since I started this group, I made it more of a conscious effort. He said, when I'm feeling that urge, I'm trying to identify what is it? Is it boredom that I'm going through? Am I feeling like I don't belong? Is it that I want a girlfriend, but I don't quite know how to get them? So he did a lot of journaling.
Mm.
And then the other thing I do, Eric, is I give the boys a journal and I'm like, let's talk about how do you journal? It's not like dear diary, I wish
Yeah.
I was a butterfly, but it's them talking about like let's really dig into the importance of writing our thoughts down. And we talked about it in Lifted. If you don't write them down, they stay swirling around in your head forever. So let's actually jot them down. And when boys are going through that and they're going through it as a team and as a community, they recognize they can be there to support one another. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something I come in and it's the problems are solved, but over the course of time, you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months, you start to see a lot of momentum, start carrying these boys in the right direction. Other things I would recommend having conversation about sex, having conversation about pornography. If you're not having the conversation and leading that conversation through your own moral compass, your sons are learning about it from whoever else they're following.
Right.
From the dude on Pornhub that's got the biggest package. That's the guy that's teaching your kid about how to treat women, right? That's really what it comes down to. Are those conversations uncomfortable? Yep. But listen, you have a kid, that's your responsibility as a parent.
Yeah.
So you need to have those conversations. And I also believe parents, when they're having those difficult conversations, it shouldn't be, okay, son, we're going to sit down and talk about the birds and the bees now. It's like,
Yeah.
bring it up when you see something on a movie, bring it up when a commercial comes up, or like go for a walk with your kids and talk about those things. And if I haven't mentioned this, and I'm kind of going all over the place, and I
That's all right.
apologize,
You're
but
good.
the importance of when you're having those difficult conversations, and to jump back or to close the loop, when I mentioned the boys feeling like a failure, feeling weak, one thing that we can do as parents is consider like how the actual nonverbal communication is happening with our sons when we're having difficult conversations. So put yourself in a position where you feel like you're getting called into your boss's office and they're sitting up on the high desk and you're sitting across from them and they're challenging you with something and you're cognizant of the way that you look. Are my eyes dotting all over? Am I sweating? Is my lip quivering a little bit? What are my hands doing? I'm starting to feel upset, especially for a boy if they're feeling upset and vulnerable and they start to get the quivery lip or a tear in their eye, they're going to shut down. So my advice to parents, whenever those difficult conversations, I'm like, go for a walk with your kid, go for a ride, go take a ride somewhere, half hour ride, listen to some music for a little bit and then engage in that conversation or take a walk or whatever. And what happens is there's a lot of psychology around you're both looking at the same vantage point. So you're for a ride, you're both looking through the windshield at the same thing, and they don't feel as insecure with communicating when they don't feel like you're peering down on them. They feel like you're both walking shoulder to shoulder. There's a lot of power in that. And that goes for any relationship, right? If you're having a difficult conversation with a significant other, that's a good way to handle it. But I know for boys that works more than it doesn't work.
Man, I had never heard that before, and but I get it. It seems I totally get where that would make sense. You know, you sort of honed in on porn, and I had a question that was going to say what is the greatest threat to young men these days? Is it, and just to throw out, social media, gaming, porn, or is it something completely different? Is it just immediate access? Is it the supercomputer we carry around? Is that the greatest threat? What is the greatest threat to young men? Pardon the interruption, everyone. Do you ever feel like you're out of alignment with your true gifts, your passion, and your purpose for being on this earth? Do you feel like you're grinding it out each week with the appearance of success and still asking, is this it? If so, I get it. I've been right where you're at. And once I figured it out for myself, it's why I started coaching. Now I help my clients get back into alignment with their authentic self. I help them find meaning, purpose, joy, and energy in each day. Check out my website at ericsardina.com to learn more and to schedule a free 15-minute strategy session. And now, back to the show.
Yeah, I would, if you combine that all into immediate gratification, right? There's no having to go through the struggle to get what you want. I think boys at this age, they're over parented in like life stuff where go out and be a kid. We've talked before about the importance of being on the playground, like go out and play games and figure out the rules and get into the fights that happen when you disagree about something. So I feel like kids are over parented and just letting them be kids. We put bubble wrap on them and we put them in these little boxes, and the little boxes, they have access to learn anything that they want to learn. And a lot of times what they're seeing is sensationalized, and it's really, graphic and dramatic and negative, and it's impacting who they are. They're underparented with their use of technology. Like, I don't think kids should be able to have smartphones until they're like, ninth grade. And I don't think they should be on social media until even after that. But because parents are like, well, the kids are like, well, everybody has it. And I remember my parents saying, well, if everybody jumped off a bridge, would you jump off a bridge too? That kind of thing. But what it's going to take is, and I would recommend um, anybody who is interested in that with a technology piece, my episode number 200 was with a guy named Nir Eyal, Nireyal. He wrote the book Indistractable. Really, really intriguing book. Definitely changed the way that I was parenting in a lot of different ways. But we talk about the use of technology. And in my conversation with Nir, we both grew up in the 80s. And I'm sure you remember, if you were born in, in that 70s, 80s time frame, there were ashtrays everywhere, dude. Do you remember, like,
Oh,
like in the house, there were ashtrays? You'd go to McDonald's and there were
ornamental.
ashtrays everywhere. There
Yeah.
were ashtrays, and all of a sudden something happened where that was no longer socially acceptable. Like if I went into someone's house and I lit up a cancer stick,
Yeah.
people are gonna be like, "What the hell
What are
are
you
you
doing?
doing right now? Like, that is not okay." All of a sudden, it happened that was no longer socially acceptable. It took some work, but I think the same thing has to happen with kids and technology. Like, we need to, and it starts in our own home, make it socially unacceptable for that to happen. So I'll give you an example. There's never a phone when we are together communicating. So it's not like I'm talking to you and you pull out your phone and you're answering snaps or you're doing whatever. If we sit down to dinner, phones are off and away. If we're ever out at a restaurant, they're not even allowed to bring their phones into the restaurant.
Yeah.
And so here's the thing that happens initially. I mean, the waiter or waitress comes over and they're like, "Oh, here's our special, scan the QR code." And I'm like, "We don't have phones." And they look at me like I'm crazy. What do
Right.
you mean you don't have a phone? Well, we're out and I'm going to spend $150 on dinner. We're not going to be on our phones. We're going to talk and we're going to laugh and we're going to joke around. And they're like, well, they don't know what to do. So I'm like, well, either read me the menu or we're going to go someplace else. And so what
Yeah.
started to happen at our local establishments, they started to have paper menus again. And a lot of them were like, thanks, Dennis. Now we have to do the paper menus. But I'm like, all right, well, you encourage more conversations with people as well.
Right.
So those are a couple of the things that I think are really the boys are struggling with. The average amount of time the boys are spending on their phones, and we do this. Like I ask them to take out their phones and what's your average daily use? The amount of time that you're spending on your phone on average over the course of a week. First, I had them guess. So their guesses are around 3 hours.
Oh,
And we chart everything. I have like lists on the board, and we come up with the average amount of the time, and their average guess is about 3 hours. The average amount of time that they spend on their phone, actual average, is just under 7 hours a day.
yeah.
7 hours a day. And with the high being, there was one boy 14 hours a day on average over the course of a week. 14 hours. If I told them right now, like, there's something that you have to do for 7 hours a day in addition to sleeping in school, they'd be like, you're crazy. I don't have that time to do it. Well, you do. And
Yeah.
imagine if you took 20 minutes of that time and you read 10 pages. What if you journaled? What if you did this? What if you went outside for 1 hour of those 7 hours and worked on your physical fitness? Like, your lives can be totally different in a year if you made that commitment right now. So when we track, like, okay, let's figure out what amount of time we're spending, make that commitment. And we talk about that word commitment, talk about it right now. So we write it down. So Eric, I'm making a commitment that I'm only going to be on my phone 6 hours a day over the course of the next month. Sign your name on it. All right, you're making that commitment here with the group. Next month we come back and it's no bullshit. You have to pull out your phone and say, this is what I've done. And if you didn't meet the goal, what was it? What got in your way? What could you do? Do you still want to do that next month? All right, what's your goal? How are you going to set that stage for success in the future? I think it's the phone is the thing right now. I was just listening to Rogan podcast. I forget the guy's name was on, but he was basically talking about like how kids are. He wrote a book about the kids being way more anxious. This is like the anxious generation of kids. And he was talking about over the course of history, since they started to measure IQ with, with groups of individuals, every year the IQ raised in our country, in our society. Every year we were seeing an increase in intellectual ability until 2012.
Yep.
And then in 2012, it started to turn, and now it's the exact opposite, and IQs are going down. And 2012 was when all of a sudden the phones became a computer and
Ubiquitous.
we could do right.
Yep.
So and I talked about with my kids last night, and we talked about why do you think that is? And the other interesting thing was, so I've a son who's 19, a daughter who's 16, a daughter who's 14. And I talked to him about social media. And I was like, what happens if you were no longer allowed to be on social media? What would you do? They'd be like, I would hate that. Why? Because I wouldn't know what everyone was doing. And, it would be really hard. You'd feel really anxious about it. And I said, what happens if I told you you were no longer allowed to be on social media, but no one else is on social media either? They'd be like, oh my God, I would love that. I would
Oh,
love
wow.
it if I didn't have to worry about the whole thing. So it becomes this, YOLO or not YOLO,
Yeah.
like FOMO, like you're afraid of
They're missing
fear of
out.
missing out on the
Yeah.
other things that are going on. And so the kids, they're really anxious about it. But what it takes is the adult community to say, we're going to put our foot down. So
Yeah.
that's what the answer is. How do we get there? I have no freaking clue. That's beyond my pay grade right now. What I'm trying to
And
do is just help the kids see it. If they can see it, hopefully reticular activating system will draw them in a way where they can start making the necessary adjustments based on what they're seeing.
yeah, and I totally agree with I love the strategies, the thing that not the tactical things you're doing around, limiting phones, keeping them away from the dinner table, those types of ideas I think are great. And I agree. I think we'll look back in history and say, wow, that was we were asleep at the wheel there, right? So with this new technology, we didn't know what to do with it. So there were no limits. It was a free for all. And you just think of the influences that come through that phone that in the past never existed, right? We didn't have to worry about that in both personally, like the influences that influenced me, and then certainly influencing my children, right? So as I was raising my kids, they were slight. So our daughter's 28, and our son is she's about to be 28. He's about to be 24. And so they're a little behind that in terms of like they weren't fully immersed in it. They were kind of on the tail end of it, or it they were a little bit older when all that stuff started to catch up to them, right? But it caught up. And so we had similar rules when they first got their first iPhones. I remember we had a basket in our kitchen, and it was like, okay, phones in the basket before they would go upstairs to bed, right? So they were never allowed to take their phones upstairs when they had that. But now, they're fully independent adults. They don't even live in the same state we live in now. So they're working and doing their thing. And so they're doing their own thing. And you see just how powerful the phone is. It's not a phone, but the computer is that we're carrying, and the information that's just constantly bathing, washing over the person, each person, myself included. And I think about my lack, I'll say, stay focused on me, of being able to do deep focused work because of the constant distractions
Hmm.
with the phone. And so I've gotten into the habit now of putting it on do not disturb for most of the day. So I'm not getting as many notifications, but I'm now to the point where I'm like, no, I need to put it in a different room because I don't even want to have the tendency to say, oh, let me look this up and let me go look at this real quick, because it's never real quick. And it's usually, again, you hear about the whole, if you're distracted from something you're doing, it takes you 15 minutes or something to get back on course. And I just think about how many times I go, oh, I need to look this up real quick. And it's hundreds probably during the day, hundreds of times. And then you think, well, maybe that's why I'm not making progress on this project or that project to the degree that I would want. Right. So I know you know Aaron Guyette, a good friend of mine and a friend of yours. I think you've both been on each other's shows. Aaron locks his phone down where no apps are available. He has an app that makes the whole phone dead with the exception of the phone function so he can get phone calls and maybe text, but every other app is dead. And the person that has the passcode to be able to unlock that is his wife. So he gives her the code, or if he's like, look, I need to get in my phone, whatever, he's got to ask for permission. She gives him
Wow.
the code, and or she unlocks it. She doesn't give him the code. She unlocks it. But basically from like 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., it's locked. And then he has a small window where he can catch up on some things, and then it locks again. And I thought, and he's like, I just know that I don't want to have the temptation to be distracted. So I give that to her. She's got the keys. And I thought, man, that is a number one, ballsy, like confident, like that's courageous move to just give up that control. But that's almost, I think, what it takes. And I think I'm playing with this whole idea of taking that step myself, where I don't, I certainly use technology. I follow people on Instagram. I'm on Instagram. I promote my show through Instagram. All that, but I see it as a massive distraction. And I think about young people with a forming brain. I mean, what that potentially does, right? And what it's teaching and what it's telling them to be like or do like. And you think and you see all these statistics saying people are getting married later, or they're not getting married at all. They're not buying a house until they're in their 30s, if at all. Whereas, that was like a major goal of mine. I
Hmm.
remember as a young person, like I want to get a job so I can get a house, get married. And I just think all that stuff is being delayed. And so you see the family sort of getting impacted by that, not sort of, it is getting impacted by that. And then the downstream effect. And this whole idea of having a weak male class, like if you look right now, I think statistically, and I'm not a massive fan of college just as a rule. Like when I grew up, it was like, you are going to college. And I believe that. I think now it's like, I'm more of this idea that there's a lot of options unless you're specifically like, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an architect, I want to be an accountant. You need college for that. Um, but the enrollment for men in college is way down, way, way down. Right. And I think if you look at college campuses, female to male population, it's like 60% female, 40% male on college campuses now. What's the downstream effect of that? Right. I mean, there are a lot of employers still that are saying if you don't have a degree, you're not going to work here at any sort of a leadership level, right? So, and you see it, and I see like what has been the thing? When did this start to happen, and what was going on when that started to happen? And to me, all these roads lead back to technology, to the phone, right? To this supercomputer, and there's got to be some stuff done, and it starts at home, right? It starts first with me, and then it goes out from there. But I think it's such a thing we're going to look back on and go, we didn't know what we were doing, right?
Agreed. Yeah. And it's just ask the question whenever you're using the technology, am I serving this technology or is it serving me?
Right.
And that's every time you'll be able to answer that question. So if you set an alarm on your phone, you are using the technology is serving you. It's getting you up at a specific time. If you're like, I want to know what the capital of Yugoslavia is. I don't even know if Yugoslavia is still
I
a
don't think it
country.
exists anymore,
All
man.
right. So what was the capital of
How
Yugoslavia?
about Washington
I
State? Let's keep
right.
it simple.
So I can go on and find out that answer because I want to know. But once you do that, like you mentioned, if you start scroll holing down into this deep depths of wherever, you're like, what's the capital of Yugoslavia? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, there's a lion chasing a zebra. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is really, wow, what's this girl dancing in a bikini for? And then all of a sudden a half hour goes by and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, what's the capital of Yugoslavia? And I have no
Right.
freaking clue because I just got so distracted. So that's what it is. It's like, are you using whatever the technology is not inherently good or bad. It's
Right.
what is our intention as we're doing it. And can we stop ourselves from getting distracted? You mentioned like turning off your phone, turning off the notifications, all excellent ideas. Whenever I'm trying to do deep work, I found an app called brain.fm. I had a guy on my podcast. His name is Jason Henkel. Coincidentally enough, I had his son on who I wound up coaching, who was going through some struggles in his own life. So it was the first father-son duo I had on the
Mm.
podcast. But Jason runs a business called Focus to Evolve. Definitely worth. I could connect you with him as well. It's a really really good discussion. I mean, digging deep into what we're talking about right now. But that's what Jason's business is. Like, how do you set up all the things logistically in your life to focus at the deepest level possible, and then also honor these ultradian rhythms that we have as far as work is concerned. Like there's the circadian rhythm as far as
Mm.
daylight. There's sleep cycles that we go through. There's also work cycles that we go through that can last between like 60 and 90 minutes. And then how do you utilize those times to get as much deep work as possible? So anyway, he recommended an app called Brain.fm. So whenever I'm trying to do some deep work, I put on headphones, and I put on this app, and then I put my phone in the other room. So it's basically what it does is it uses sounds, and so it could be like waves or like the rainforest. So picture like a
Mm.
sleep app kind of thing, but the cadence of it mimics your brain waves when you're doing deep work, when you're trying to do creative work, if you're trying to relax, if you're trying to meditate. And so I've recognized I could swear by this thing. If I need to roll up my sleeves and I'm like, I got to get an hour of work done right here, I put on headphones, put on the app, put it in the other room, and all of a sudden, like after 5 or 6 minutes, I'm so dialed in. And then I get to the end of it, I'm like, I just got a whole lot of shit done that I wouldn't have got done before if I was having my phone next to me. Because I'd be like, oh wait, somebody such and such just emailed me. I got to text this person back. Wait, what's going on? Wait, I got to check the schedule for my daughter's softball game. I wonder where they're playing. What's that team's record? I wonder if that girl is still pitching the other team. And all of a sudden, you're like, where the hell did I just go right there?
Right.
Right. And I still don't know the capital of Yugoslavia. I still don't
Right.
fucking know the cap, but that's what happens. So, but if we can be really intentional, so I'm using the technology there to serve me rather than the opposite of that.
Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely gonna try that. So basically, the headphones are your Bluetooth to the phone, so you're hearing whatever it's in there. The phone's, but it's not there to distract you. I'm definitely gonna
Yep.
jump on that. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure. Um, cool. That's so. I was gonna ask some solutions that you think will work. These are certainly some solutions. Anything else that you kind of recommend for the boys that is sort of that fundamental thing when you get them started in the program? Like, hey, look, guys, this is how we're gonna, start to noticeably make improvements in our lives and how we feel, how we act, how we show up.
So I mentioned before, like there were the things that we talked about, like what does it really mean to be a man? So what I do is we definitely talk about the reticular activating system. So we talk about the importance of seeing those things intentionally. And so one of the things I talk to the boys about, and this is a good activity to do with your own kids. We talk about like I ask the boys, I'm like, hey, has anybody in here seen a red car in the last 24 hours? And they're like, yeah, well, sure, I've seen a red car. I'm like, exactly how many red cars have you seen in the last 24 hours? And they're like, I have no idea. And like it could be 8 or it could be 80. I don't know. But I said, what if I give you $100 for every red car you saw in the next 24 hours? Do you think you would know exactly how many red cars? And they're like, 100%, absolutely, I would. And I'm why? Well, now there's some kind of a payoff. There's an opportunity associated with it. And I'm like, okay, what if you take that and make that work in your entire life? What if the red car represented all the positive things that you were capable of doing? So what if only seeing the negative, you were able to see the positive? What if it became why you're going to find success in this area? And the whole RAS thing,
Mm.
that's a deep dive. And I do that with my own kids as well. And I talk to my daughters about it about 2 years ago. I don't even know if I mentioned this on the podcast or not, but I said to them, that whole idea with the red car thing. And I said, pick out any car in the world, pick out any car. And my daughter's like, Dad, a green Kia Soul. And I had to look at what a green Kia Soul. I totally didn't know what it looked like. And if any of the audience members own one, my sincerest
Oh,
apologies. I believe it's an ugly ass car. I see it and I'm like, why did they decide to make this car and this color? It's like metallic mint green. It was like the color of Chevy Chase's family truckster in the original Vacation. It has that tone to it. But also, there's 5 different greens that Kia made these green Kia Souls with. I swear, there's like a hunter green. There's like a very bright, like chartreuse kind of green. There's mustardy. It's
wow.
amazing. But what I started to do was talk to my kids about, all right, when we see a green Kia Soul, that's going to be our reminder to ourselves, like, let's pause and start looking for the positive things in life instead of doing the reverse, which is most of us do. We look for the reasons why we got the bad grade or why the girl won't go out with us or why we
Right.
let's look for the positive. So anyway, now we see green. I see them all over the place, dude. I really, and you will too. You'll see green Kia Souls, and all of a sudden you'll remember this conversation. But what that did was it helped us recognize like how we're thinking about our thinking, the idea of metacognition. How do you think about your thoughts and being really cognizant of that? So that's a conversation I definitely have with boys as well. I totally believe in delaying gratification and I believe in intentional discomfort. It's something that we talk about. Like, can you put yourself through the challenging thing? Because you're going to find the challenging thing is either going to be now or you're going to punt it down the road for 20 years and go through
Mhm.
something really challenging. You get to pick your hard. So is your hard waking up early? Is your hard training? Is your hard reading the book? Is your hard doing the homework? Or is your hard, in 20 years, you're sad and you're overweight and you're on the couch and you're unemployed? Like that could be your hard as well. We talk about the whole idea of like the McCraven book, Make Your Bed.
Mm.
Like, can you wake up and make that promise to yourself and keep that promise and repeating those things? And that helps building confidence. We talk about an idea for parents too is the idea of being able to say no to your kids. It's a really hard thing to do. You're not your kid's friend. You're your kid's parent. Let them be friends with you when they have their own family and they're like, wow, dad, I remember that lesson you taught me at the time. I thought you were a real son of a
Yeah.
bitch, but now I know that that's the right thing. And I use the analogy of like if you're on a plane and you're flying somewhere and the pilot's like, "Hey, listen, we got to make an emergency landing right now. I got to bring this down because of X, Y, and Z that's going on in the engine. We're not going to be able to make it all the way to California." And your kid's like, I really want to go to California. And you're like, all right. The pilot's like, all right, we're going to go anyway. Forget about we're going to go to California. No, like you're the parent, you know what's right and wrong for your kid. It's at that time you have to be like, I appreciate you sharing your opinion, but that's not what's going to happen right now. This is what we're going to do because I need to take all the things into consideration. Not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's really, really important.
Right on. That's awesome, brother. Hey, talk a little bit about the podcast. What are you doing with the podcast? What's the latest with that? Um,
It's I mean basically it's like I'm trucking along with the podcast. You mentioned and I remember that conversation very very vividly when you reached out. We had like an hour and a half conversation
yeah.
on the phone one day just connecting or whatever. So it's cool to see our journey over the past 2+ years here. So the podcast started in July of 2020, ready, fire, aim, didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I just started talking on the microphone, really, cringeworthy when I go back and listen. But now I go back and I'm like, wow, I really needed help in all of these areas. And I was just like trying to figure out a way that if I talk about it, maybe I'll invite these good things into my life in some capacity. So what I did for a while was it was me doing solo casts, and then I started to interview people. And then my brother Anthony, you mentioned you had him on your
Yeah.
podcast. My brother Anthony joined
Great
for a
guy.
period of time. We were in a studio for a period of time. And then what I'm doing right now is I'm back to doing interviews by myself. And I was able to connect with his name is Mark Picard. If you haven't met Mark, I'll definitely introduce you to him as well. Mark was the star of Cirque du Soleil in Vegas for many years,
Oh,
and he just basically decided after a while, and his face is still on the Cirque du Soleil billboard. Like his image is still there. He was like the main guy, but he left and he moved out to Spain and he just tried to simplify his life a little bit. He's an ultra marathon runner, and he started a business around digital marketing and podcast producing. And I've had him on the show, and he
yeah.
was so inspired by Building Men. He's done a lot of work. Like he created the Building Men logo. He changed our colors to black, white, and pink. Like he's the guy
Yep.
responsible for the way that the
I
branding
remember.
looks right now. And So Mark is now producing the Building Men podcast. So it's cool because it looks more uh like official. It looks like more, it's
Next level.
yeah, it has a different look and feel to it because for a while I was doing all the stuff myself, chief cook, bottle washer type thing. And Mark has been really inspired. He said, I wish I had something like this when I was growing up. I wish I had a group to talk to as a young man. What happens is a lot of times, and there's so many people in our space too that are helping guys in their 30s and 40s and 50s. What if we were able to start at 12, 13, 14, 15? Could their life have been a little bit different? And that's what the work I'm trying to do right now. So the podcast, there was a while that I was just chasing the big guests. I wanted the Anthony Trucks on, I wanted the Mikey C. Ruck on, I wanted all those guys on, they're great. It's awesome having those conversations, but I've taken a bit of a step back. I want to have conversations that are really interesting right now that will help a young man that's listening or help the parent of a young man who's listening to the show right now. So I put out an episode once a week. It's on Fridays, and I'm just trucking along with it. And eventually in the future, would I love it to continue to grow? Yes, that'll be concurrent with me scaling Building Men to have other people start going into schools and doing that work as well.
Right on. Yeah, yeah. I love that. And you mentioned some of those guests, and that, so I've had Anthony Trucks on. I just interviewed him. I haven't released the show. What a fabulous guy. Mikey C. Rock, also fabulous guy, big hearted guys. And I can appreciate what you're saying, because I think when I started the show as well, it was this sort of dream, like, oh, one day I'll have really massive guests on.
Yeah.
And what it's become for me is I want good people on. Like they could have a big following, or they don't necessarily have to have a big following or any following. But if it's a great story and a great person and someone that I go, man, this is a good human being, I'm just glad to share them and have a platform where they can share their story with others. Is what I take true joy from now, right? And it's that idea of just trying to spread some positivity and some goodness in the world and let people get out there and tell their story. So I totally appreciate that. So I want to ask a little bit about, you mentioned the doing the hard things. I can get my head around that. You talk about doing uncomfortable things or delayed gratification. I know you've gotten into some Spartan races. What does a daily routine look like for you, or a morning routine, or what are some of the things that you've seen improve your life? I know for those maybe again that don't know some of your story, you were an athlete, so your fitness and all that as a young man was top of mind. It was essential. And then maybe as we tend to, as we get into kind of those 30s and such, you lose that edge, and so you're getting a little bit out of shape, and you found yourself overweight, out of shape, and then you kind of got back on the regimen of working out, and then you did your first Spartan race. And so just talk about some of the things that you feel like you're doing now that are important and valuable and have helped you.
When I don't even know when it was that I decided to start doing like morning walks. That was a game changer for me. So I'm up. I try not to set an alarm. And usually I'm just waking up at 5:15 in the morning. But one of the first things, I'll have a quick cup of coffee, I do a quick meditation, quick journal, and then I'm out the door, and anywhere between a half hour and 45 minutes as the sun is coming up, and I walk in the direction of the sun. So I'm getting the sun on my face in the morning. Most mornings I'm not listening to anything. There's a couple where I'm like, I really want to listen to a Huberman podcast today. I want to
I was
listen
going
to
to
Joe
say
Rogan podcast. Like
that's
that, not
Huberman.
every time. Yeah, like those are ones I'll listen to Jordan Peterson, but those are not all the time. So every third time I'm out, and you mentioned you were busting my balls about the sports teams. During the draft process, I was listening to Giants podcast to see who's the guy that they're going to select in the first round this year. Right now, the Knicks are doing really well too. They just beat the Sixers, so who knows what will transpire from this point moving forward by the time this is episode is released. But it's a good time right now. Yankees are doing well, and the Knicks just beat the Sixers in the first round. But I
Right.
digress. So in the morning, I'm walking towards the sun. That's a game changer for me. It's when I start to organize my thoughts in my head. That's been a really, really positive thing. Plus, I'll get in 2 miles or whatever in the morning before everyone else is awake. So I get back to the house. By the time I get back to the house, it's about 7 o'clock in the morning, and then my day can start. I've been really regimented on getting to the gym. In the Spartan race, there's so much that is upper body strength, where you're doing monkey bars, you're doing rings, you're doing heavy carries. I was able to get to the top of the rope at the Spartan. The last time I did it, I was unable to get to the top of the rope. So I got to the top of the rope, I rang the bell, and then I fell the 25 feet to the ground. That I didn't get any injuries.
Oh
But
man.
it was I kicked my ass this time. But one thing that I did do, Eric, was Julie and I went to Puerto Rico at the end of February, and we just made the commitment, like, all right, we're not going to have another sip of alcohol until after the race is over. And at first, the first 5 or 6 days were hell. And I started to recognize that since I turned 17 years old, I haven't gone a week without having alcohol at
Mm,
all, ever in my life since I turned 17 years old. And then I started to think about, well, what is my relationship with alcohol? And at the same time on the podcast, I had two guys on, Rob Pengelly. The episode just came out. Uh, Actually, it's today when we're recording this episode, and a guy named Bill Matthews who struggled with alcohol and drug addiction throughout the course of their life. So I'm interviewing both of these guys as I'm in the process of not drinking. And now I get to 10 days, and then I get to 2 weeks, and then I get to 3 weeks, and all of a sudden, and we're checking it off on this big ass calendar, the Jesse Itzler big ass calendar that we
yeah.
have with all the stuff on it. And all of a sudden, we're like, we got some momentum here. So we went through, and not only did I get stronger, my cardio was off the charts. I dropped like 15 pounds. I felt like I saw stomach muscles for the first time in a while. Like I was feeling great. Um, and then all of a sudden we got to the race, and I'm like, we just did something really cool here. Not only did we bring 15 people together to do a Spartan race, we raised a ton of money for charity. We did it as a team, and I didn't have to have any alcohol during that time. So I was able to reset my relationship with alcohol. After the race was over, I did have a beer that turned into
Yeah.
like 8. Um, but I paid for it too because not having alcohol in a period of time, like I didn't have the same level of tolerance.
Right.
So it was a messy night after the Spartan race. But afterwards, I'm like, I don't need to, have a beer when I'm watching the game or when I'm grilling or whatever. It
Right.
was able to, I was able to reset my relationship with drinking alcohol, which that was a really positive thing for me as well. It became, and it was something that Julie and I did together. It was a cool, bonding experience for our relationship. And then also setting an example for my son who's in college, for my daughters who are in high school. You don't need to have alcohol to have a good time. And especially if you have some lofty goals that you're setting for yourself. When I got done with the Spartan race too, I'm like, sign me up for the next one in Palmerton in Pennsylvania in the Poconos. I'm going to do that one. I'm doing another team together when we get to this point again next year. So those are a couple of the things. The rest of the stuff is like, I do my best to limit screen time, to journal, to read. My nutrition's pretty dialed in right now. Those are the things that, on a regular basis that I'm doing, and they just work. I mean, it's like it's those things. It takes a little while to get those habits going, but once you do, you just feel good about
Feels
yourself. My
good.
sleep got so much better. It was like across the board, things just started to really click for me.
Yeah, yeah. So I have to ask because this comes up so often on my show, but cold plunges. Where do you stand on the cold plunge? Have you done them?
Yeah, I mean, I'll do a cold shower every once in a while. I'm not married to it. I get the whole intentional discomfort thing. And I've done some research. Like Huberman had the whole thing about the cold plunge, and when the weight loss piece of it is when you get out and you shiver, and there's like I think it's called brown fat that your body's and then you go back in and you come back out and you shiver again. So there are times like when I go for a walk in the morning and shower before going to the gym, I'll jump in, I'll do a cold shower. I don't do it religiously. I don't need to, and you won't ever see me posting about it. I know some people like, watch me, jump in cold water and shiver, and you can do hard things too. I'm never,
Yeah.
I'm never into doing that stuff. I get it, but I'm also like, I do a lot of hard things in my life.
Right.
I don't need everything to be super hard. Like
Uh, I'm with
like,
you.
yeah, like I'll
Make some
enjoy
choices.
warm too.
Right.
I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
warm.
Yeah, yeah. I love the cold plunge. I love how I feel coming
Yeah,
out. Love how it is hard every time getting in, and then how you can feel the body sort of transform. So if the first 30 seconds are always miserable, but then you sort of settle into it.
yeah,
And then how I just from an anti-inflammation stuff, all the physiological as well as the doing hard things. So I think there is the whole I'm doing hard things, but then there is a physiological benefit. I'm a little bit into the mental overcome, but I also just love how I feel when I get out of the water. And so it's definitely good. And I do the cold shower thing too. For a similar reason, I can feel my body shift gears. I can
yeah.
like first 30 seconds of cold water coming out of that shower head are terrible every time. And I struggle with turning that knob to make it cold. But after 30 seconds, you feel your body kind of do what it was built to do, which is it kicks in a heat engine and it starts to, all of a sudden it doesn't feel as cold, right? It just doesn't feel as bad. So I dig that. But but love the journaling, love the walking, love all that stuff you're doing. It's fantastic. Um, so what's next, brother? What are you excited about, man, as we look to kind of wrap up, and what's kind of on the plate? I know you've talked about scaling your business. Talk about what's on the horizon and what you're looking forward to.
By the time that this comes out, I will have done this already, but I was asked to do a big speech at a convention, educational leadership convention in Atlantic City in the middle of May, as a keynote speaker, basically talking about the success I've seen with the Building Men program. And this is my Super Bowl. This is
Awesome.
my opportunity, right? To instead of me knocking on a million doors, you know what now I get to go on stage and share my story and let people hear it and then come and knock on my door,
Yeah.
it's been a big transition. For a long time, I was met with so many no's, Eric. It was like, not only just not answering emails or, yeah, they'll call you back. Or if I do get someone, well, what about the girls? What about our trans population? What about this? Well, we can't do this. We don't have the funding. And so it's come to the point where now I'm able to get some recognition. Not that I need the recognition myself, but for the power of honoring that the boys in the school need some help as well. They're really struggling across the board in every single metric that you can possibly imagine across the board. Boys are struggling when compared to the girls in school. Not that we shouldn't be addressing the needs of the girls. I absolutely think we should, but we need to do something intentional to help the boys. So to have that opportunity to speak up on a big stage about this, it's like a dream come true for me. So it's the thing that I'm really pumped up about. And then, just being in a space where the family's doing well, relationships are, I'm just getting my cup is filled right now across the board. Friendships that, guys that I haven't seen in a while, I'm really honoring old friendships. And as guys, what happens? We get, engaged and then married and have kids. And all of a sudden it's like, well, I can't do this because we got a tournament in, so and such park this weekend, and I got to get to Home Depot. And then you feel like Frank the Tank from old school, right? Like that becomes what our life is. And what I started to recognize is like, I need to make time for my buddies, and not just we're going to go get banged up and watch the game. Like we're going to go train together, or we're going to go on a walk together and talk about the real things that are going on. And I think, what I've decided to do recently was like really lean into those like deeper friendships that I've had in my life. And it's more about the depth and the breadth of the friendships, right? So those are a couple cool things that are going on right now. Podcast is going well. I have a consistent audience. So shout out to all those that are listening. And dude, I wanted to tell you, I'm so proud of you, man. I think back to our first conversation and just your story arc over the last several years. I mean, the fact that this is episode 100, it's so cool. I remember our first conversation like it was yesterday, and you said you had this idea of what you wanted to do. So all the work that you put in to find your voice, and I love how you do an episode. You research and you don't stray from who you are, but you bring value to everyone. And it's awesome, and I'm really, really proud of you. And I'm honored that you chose to have me on as your number 100 episode. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's been a fabulous conversation, man. I thank you for those kind words. You've been so helpful to me, and yeah, I'm honored to be with you, and love having you as a friend. So I so appreciate that. Man, where can people find you? Where can they keep up with your work, and how do they get involved if they want to get involved with you?
It's the website is buildingmen.io, where you can find me, and then on Instagram I'm building.men, and it's the Building Men podcast. Reach out to me. I'll get back to you. Especially if you have a kid or a boy in teenage years. I do an online coaching thing for boys, like a group that meets every other Sunday, and we talk about this stuff. We talk about the real stuff, or if you're connected with a school in any capacity, or tell your school to reach out to me. Like this stuff needs to be out there, and even if they're not interested, I could give them a couple pointers or tips to get their own thing going in schools, because even if it's not me doing it, someone should be doing it, helping the boys. They're struggling right now. So whatever we can do to support them.
Amen. Absolutely. Dennis, I love you, brother. Man, thanks so much for being on the show. Again, honored that you be here, and just humbled to know you, and can't thank you enough for taking time from what I know is a really busy schedule. Yeah, just so privileged to know you, brother, and thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate that. Love you too, man. Keep it up.
Absolutely. To our audience, Thank you for taking time from your day to listen. Always appreciate that you do that. Man, share the show with a friend. Write us a nice review. Give us a star rating. All those things help us reach a broader audience. Until next time, friends, I'm Eric Sardina. You've been listening to the Return to Authenticity podcast, and bye for now.